There is a particular kind of courage that asks nothing of you except stillness. Picture a winter morning in occupied Belgium, 1943. A woman sits beside a frost-edged window, her needles clicking in a steady, unhurried rhythm. German soldiers pass below on the street, boots crunching on cobblestone, breath clouding in the cold air. They do not look up. They never look up. To them she is invisible, just another old woman, wrapped in wool, passing the hours. But her fingers are telling a story. Every stitch is a secret, and the garment growing in her lap is a map of everything the enemy believes is hidden. This is the world of wartime steganography, the art of hiding intelligence in plain sight, and it is one of the most quietly astonishing chapters of the Second World War. Needles as instruments of resistance. What made knitting so devastatingly effective as an intelligence tool was the same quality that made it invisible. It was considered entirely domestic, entirely feminine, and entirely harmless. Resistance networks in Belgium, France, and the Netherlands understood this psychological blind spot and exploited it with extraordinary discipline. Women positioned near railway lines became critical nodes in Allied intelligence gathering. As trains passed, troop transports, artillery carriers, ammunition wagons, these watchers translated what they saw directly into stitch patterns, a purl stitch where a knit stitch should be, a deliberate dropped stitch creating a small hole in the fabric, a sequence of yarn overs grouped in a way that looked like decoration, but counted out the cars in a munitions convoy. The finished garments were then passed hand to hand through resistance networks until they reached someone who held the key to reading them. The most well-documented encoding method mirrored Morse code directly. Knit stitches served as dots, purl stitches as dashes. A completed scarf or sock might carry a full intelligence message across a checkpoint that would have confiscated a written note without a second thought. The genius was not just in the encoding, it was in the absolute normalcy of the carrier. Phyllis and the silk thread. No story captures this world more vividly than that of Agent Phyllis Latour Doyle, a special operations executive agent who parachuted into Normandy in 1944. Over the months that followed, she transmitted 135 separate intelligence messages to Allied command. She recorded each one on strips of silk so thin they could be wound around a knitting needle and tucked into her hair without raising suspicion. Her knitting was her cover, her cipher machine, and her lifeline, all at once. She was 23 years old. Why this still matters. The U.S. Office of Censorship took these methods seriously enough that in 1942 they banned the overseas mailing of knitting patterns entirely, fearing coded messages were moving through commercial publications undetected. That decision alone tells you everything about how effective this tradecraft had become. For those of us drawn to fieldcraft and preparedness, the lesson here runs deeper than wartime history. These women demonstrated that the most resilient intelligence systems are the ones that require no technology, no infrastructure, and no obvious tradecraft, only observation, patience, and a skill so ordinary that no one thinks to question it. In a world increasingly dependent on digital communication, there is something profound in remembering that a pair of needles and a ball of wool once helped turn the tide of a war. A final stitch. The needles have long since gone quiet. The women who sat by those windows are largely unnamed in the history books, their contributions hidden as thoroughly in the historical record as their messages were hidden in wool. But the fieldcraft principle they embodied is timeless. The best camouflage is not what conceals you from the eye. It is what conceals you from the mind. If this episode has reminded you that survival and resistance have always lived in unexpected places, share it with someone who values history, self-reliance, and the enduring human capacity to adapt. And if you haven't yet subscribed to Fieldcraft Chronicles, now is the time. Every episode is built for people who believe that understanding the past is the sharpest tool in any preparedness kit. Subscribe, share, and keep your skills close, because history never stops being relevant.